Hello and welcome to CloudThat's very first podcast edition, a platform where we bring in industry leaders, innovators, and visionaries together to uncover how technology is shaping the future of business. Today's episode is truly special. We are joined by a distinguished leader who has been instrumental in driving digital transformation and redefining technology strategy in his organization. Through this conversation, we aim to explore real-world insights, innovation, and the way forward enterprise in India. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest, Nikhil Malhotra, Chief Innovation Officer, Global Head of AI and Emerging Technologies at Tech Mahindra.
Thank you so much, Trishul.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Podcast is built around a very powerful theme, India's digital workforce, how IT talent will power Viksit Bharat 2047. We believe India is entering a pivotal phase and the role of IT leaders like you has been more crucial. Before we deep dive into specific topics, I'd love to understand and start with your perspective. What excites you the most about India's IT journey today?
Well, I think there are a lot of exciting things to be, right. I think since the phase of globalization when it started way back in 2001 or 1990s when the seeds were sown, I think Indian IT services today has actually shown the world as to how we can deliver well and how we can deliver at scale. I think it's very important for us to deliver at scale. The entire workforce for every organization that sits in the world, right, lies back in India. But time has now changed. I think this is the time for us to actually change India's perspective as well. I think it's no longer just being consumers of technology. So you see that phase of the last 10 years that we have seen. Last 10 years have probably shown that the way IT now looks at the world also has to become more as a producer system rather than a consumer system. So it's been a long time that we've been consumers of technology. It is high time now that IT services now becomes producers. And that's also with the theme of Viksit Bharat, right? But we are looking at 2047. But I think I reckon another 4 or 5 years, for example, is the time given to Indian IT services to actually become those producers. And when I say producers, what does it really mean, right? So for example, we've been utilizing products, we've been utilizing services from across the world, but never have ever an Indian product reached a stage where the world says that, look, I've utilized it. That's the time for Indian IT, right? So Indian IT should be thinking about more of R&D. Indian IT should be thinking around producing more entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial value, as we call it, for people to actually make more wealth, right? At the end of the day, it's also about more wealth creation that you can do for the society. And then Indian IT should be thinking about products and also platforms that can go across in the world. And then the world really utilizes, right? We've been the backbench of a lot of products. We've managed it, we've made it, but now it's time for an Indian product or an Indian IT services to take that lead into that system. And that for me is probably Viksit Bharat in the next coming to 10, 12, 15 years.
Wonderful, that's great insights. Currently, we are at world's number 4th largest economy, and in less than 2 years, we'll be world's number 3, right? So, what is your take on Viksit Bharat vision? So, the research says today's GDP will be 2047's whole GDP of innovation and transformation. About 4.5 trillion will be contribution only from technology.
Yeah.
So, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think in order to improve the GDP, I think we are also talking about a lot of personal wealth as well, and also more in terms of the country wealth, in terms of how we are doing. So one of the things that you see now that the change has happened is, and I keep saying this word, the innovation in India doesn't happen in the urban sector. If you have to look at innovation, look at tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And you can also look at the villages where this innovation is, because that's where the need is. And necessity is the mother of invention. Now, how do we catapult that small innovation that happens in a very frugal way, a word which is commonly misnomerically used as jugaad, but also then take it forward and bring it at a much more wider global scale, right? So it's more global in terms of what to do. I've, in my role, I've had the pleasure of meeting so many kids now who want to do something in India and largely come from tier 2 and tier 3. I have a 14-year-old today who's actually working incidentally for someone. I think the second is that we should also be promising a lot of entrepreneurial ventures, right? I think time, yes, I'm being in a job, I'm still saying it, that entrepreneurial ventures to create more value for GDP, but also more value in terms of products and platforms is what India should be looking forward to. And one of the first things to catapult in India is the language barrier. And when I say language barrier, India is basically a land which has got so much diversity in terms of language, but also in terms of the food that we eat and the clothes that we wear. Um, Officially we speak 30 mother tongues, and we have 1645 dialects as an official register. Unofficially, this country speaks 19,200 dialects. So that's where the saying goes that every 50 kilometers, your dialect, the way you speak, the way you interact really changes. How do we pick up all of that? Right? There's so much of examples that we get. That's number one. Number two, we don't believe even today that we are the data bowl of the world. Right? So the amount of data that we've got and the amount of use cases that we can build out of India is magnificently large. And we have not still catapulted even a percentage in it. And you can imagine a self-driving car running in US, but can you imagine a self-driving car running in India? And the reasons for that is there's so much of outside in use cases that come in that you have to cater to. So I'd say it's a combination that I think that India would go into Viksit Bharat. One is make sure that corporates like us and other corporates should enter into the R&D world, should actually start looking at platforms and products to serve their customers across the world, but also in India. I think second is picking up the tier 2, tier 3 sector and making sure that they actually produce an entrepreneurial value. Today, every kid that is born in a village wants to go to the city to do a job. Can we pick up their brains to solve that local problem and make it much more global in terms of what we are trying to do? And third is obviously training, right? Our training of youth. I still feel that our academics are very theoretical in terms of what we've done. We need to add that practical value for kids to see how you really work well, right, in terms of what you do. I think those three things is I'm very positive that those are the three things that we should be taking forward to in terms of making Viksit Bharat.
That's really insightful. In fact, that reminds me about the gap, right? That's not going to be fixed anytime soon. By the time the academia catches up with the technology, the technology is 2 steps ahead. So
no, very well said. I think one of the things that I do believe in is we are still not realizing the 3 pillars of democracy, and it's high time. I think this government has actually done some effort. Corporates are doing some efforts from that side. Academia is also doing, but they're largely very disintegrated. I think we need to make sure that every democracy today stands on 3 pillars. One is obviously the corporate that makes money. The second is obviously the academia that trains people, and the third is the government, which actually gives in policies. How can we combine these 3 pillars together to make a strong foundation on which India or probably Viksit Bharat stands? I think that is something that we have to, shape our heads in, and that's really probably the responsibility of us as leaders as well, right? Saying that this is what I really want to do. So I always tell my team, you have to have a work project that you should be getting along 9 to 5 or whatever time you spend in an organization, but you should also have a home project. And that home project should actually be purposeful and should be value driven. So there is one area of profit that you should get towards, but there's an area of purpose that you should also be getting across.
It's interesting. So I'll also have some home project after this podcast.
Yes.
So Nikhil, how do you see India transitioning from IT service hub to strategic innovation product driven economy?
Well, so I think seeds have been sown already. I think you would see a larger picture. I think one of the things that you're seeing is a lot of effort from the government. We are fortunate enough to be part of the India AI mission. Now, what does India AI mission really include is, of course, at the outset, it's about creating a large language model. I told you language is a big barrier. How do you actually catapult that language so that computers also understand, right? For example, a housewife trying to do an e-commerce today, including my mother, right? She will never go to her e-commerce site today to do it because she's still fearful of what will happen. The Alexa in your house actually talking to you in your own dialect, whether it is Bhojpuri, Avdi, or whatever language that you speak. So that's the mission in terms of what we are doing. So seeds have been sown. Now, there is an effort that needs to be made. I think the effort is, can we have the government have more of these vocational based trainings rather than the pure academic sector? So I don't think kids now need to learn the usual academics. I think that academic structure needs to change for our kids. Our kids should actually study till 10th or whatever. That's what I believe. And they should then enter into a vocational based training as to how do you really practically apply it. I think that's the change that we need to do. That will give us the idea from these kids to create a lot of these products. And that is what will define the new strategy of this. And then third pillar, which is obviously the corporate, has to now start looking at more in terms of giving value to the R&D and the product or the platforms that you create. because these platforms may not just serve the outside world. These platforms and products will obviously serve India as well. So there is one focus as India and one focus across the world. And I think world over, with the growth of AI, you're seeing another thing. Every country is going towards a sovereign AI structure. My data is my data. My ethics and biases is mine. Please don't, please don't assume that whatever ethics and bias that you have delivered, let's say in a Western world, would also follow into my country or ethics, right? I've seen it happen in Middle East and Africa. I'm seeing it happen in Southeast Asia. India is no different, and India is going through that tag, right? So India is saying that now is the time that you build these sovereign structures, which serves a large population over there. I still remember I did a work for, this was very interesting work that we did for PSA, Principal Scientific Advisor, about a couple of years back. And the application that we built was called Atmanirbhar Krishi. And Atmanirbhar Krishi was basically to support about 14 million farmers across the country. But there were very specific asks to it. Number one, if you open the app and you sit at any place or stand, based on your geolocation, the app will change the language. So if you are standing in Haryana, the language would turn to Hindi. If you are sitting in, let's say, for example, South, for example, Hyderabad, the language would change suddenly to Telugu or something, whatever that you speak of the local dialect. That's the first thing that happens. What should the app do? The app should actually tell the farmers what is his need. Number one, we are an agrarian society. We should be telling the farmers the precipitation. And so that's a great idea. Precipitation should be there. But can we not tell the farmer the soil value concerns? How many minerals are there in the soil? What are the facets of, what is the closest source of water that is available? What is the soil ratio value of these minerals? What plants should you grow over there, right? So this is what we built, and we were very proud. In one of those discussions, when we were talking about the precipitation, which is rainfall prediction, a lot of people don't know that we went back to Panchang. So Panchang is something that you obviously use in your house, and you actually use Panchang to figure out what's the next day, the next moonrise, sunrise, etc. For centuries, Panchang has been used for India to predict rainfall as well. Because Indian agrarian system is, as a cash crop, is that you sow today, but you reap about 1.5 years later. It's not that you sow now and you will reap it into 5 or 6 months. That happened obviously because of Green Revolution. We wanted food faster. So my team actually, actually went and studied this with farmers. They learned it. We combined 2 or 3 Panchangs which were from South, etc. And we did our prediction. And we made a prediction system. We said, where do we check? So we needed rainfall data. Surprisingly, okay, Indian rainfall data, yes, there is available from the departments. You get some offline data, etc. We incidentally went to Sydney, and Sydney's data, they had about 100 years of old data of what the rainfall was, and our model actually predicted it much better than the IMD model. Okay. So we got very, very enthused by this system, right? So it's also about combining old Indian science with the new facets of doing things, which is what we need to bring back, right? People normally reject those ideas, but those are places that we actually now need to catapult back into India. And I do think once we do that, the products that will come out and the strategies, for at least the economic strategies that will come out, will be very, very different that the world has not seen at this point.
I totally align with what exactly you see about the old science and the new technology. It has to work hand in hand. Especially Indians, we are very strong to our roots.
Yeah.
Whether you were in US for many years, but your roots are still in India.
Right?
And people would love to come back. How do you define Viksit Bharat 2047?
So I think 2047 is going to be a very, very different world in India. I sometimes sit on Sundays and actually think about it and reimagine as to how our kids would do. One of the things, the first question that comes to mind is, will they do a similar job as we have been doing, right? The way we are working, etc. That would significantly change, right? I do think that there is going to be an evolution of the human consciousness in those 10-15 years, and that human consciousness largely been, and I don't know, some people will not reject this idea, will largely be defined by the AI and quantum consciousness. You see AI's growth. You see people today using AI as a tool. Some people will reject it and keep saying things like saying that AI is just a tool, AI would not happen. I believe this is the most significant change that the world has actually seen, and I've been doing AI for a long period of time. I started AI research way back in 2002, 2003, which is about 23 years back. I was part of IBM, and obviously Watson was one of the biggest things that could happen at that point in time. And natural language was very, very important. So how do you understand a human language in terms of doing that? Cut to now, 2022-23, you've got ChatGPT. And I think almost everyone, including my kids as well, and world over, people have been getting answers from ChatGPT. I think what's changed? The change is, for the first time ever, AI became more human-like in their human-like, and I'm not saying it became human, in the responses that it gave. We have spent our entire life on, I've spent almost about 2 decades on natural language research, and the only thing that I could do was to understand the language. So we could understand the morphology of the structure of the words, we could understand the language. Never ever was there a point where we could generate language so that it becomes so conversational. And that is exactly what Alan Turing defined as the age of artificial intelligence. You're currently sitting there. Now imagine what this future expresses itself, right? You already have self-driving cars in some parts of the world. We would have some rules to actually do self-driving cars. You may have air taxis as well by that time, which is actually great. But I think quantum would start coming in at that point in time, and the whole consciousness evolution would start happening. This is what I believe will happen in 2047. I think the whole value for money, as we consider now, may completely go. Today, money is, I did something and you gave me some money in cash and kind. It's still a barter. I don't think money will remain the same way as it is. So when my kids actually grow up and get into 2047, money may just be a very arbitrary sense in terms of the time spent between you and me, and that may be the money left. So it's a completely different world. I think it's still about 24, 25 years, a quarter century away. But I still feel that the way technology is progressing today, we will, unless we kill ourselves with technology, this is probably what's going to happen with this. I think India would be the centerpiece of all of this. The reason for that, again, I told you, right? Yeah, the kind of use cases and the edge. So I normally call India the fringe of the world. The fringe, why? Because all the fringe use cases come in India. You can drive a self-driving car there, but the fringe will never come in. You will never have a rickshawala or a cow come in the middle of the road, and suddenly you have to stop your car. So fringe will happen in India. So India's data and the kind of things that we do for India in the next quarter century will really define the world's progress in terms of work.
That's really exciting and scary at the same time.
Yeah, it is.
Exciting because we are from the generation where we have seen the technology transform.
Correct.
From a VCR,
correct, exactly,
to a CD, to a pen drive, floppy, whatnot.
Correct.
And when you talk about technology in terms of transportation, India is yet to experience Hyperloop, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
And you're talking about transporting humans. Scary part is people might even just take a pill instead of having a heavy buffet.
Yes.
One pill is going to
fill
your stomach. That's scary because people will lose the touch of Indian multi-cuisine, the culture. You never know.
Oh, you never know. There may be a machine built in your house that you actually order in the morning, and the kind of Indian cuisine that you want is actually ready by the time you reach it. There may be things that may happen over there, but there's enough possibilities with tech that we are looking at.
Because by 2030, India will have the largest man force in the world.
Yes.
Right. I just imagine that kind of population being educated in the right way and towards the technology. India, being Viksit Bharat's vision, is just
possibilities are endless.
Huge possibility, and it's just within the reach.
Absolutely.
So, what IT skills and competencies should India develop to remain in the competition by 2047 globally?
You'll kill me if I say that the only IT skill needed today is passion and courage. I know there are other skills from IT perspective. I can be very boring and monotonous and say, look, you've got to learn mathematics.
Okay.
You need to learn calculus. You need to learn probability. In today's world, you have to have statistics. You need to learn linear algebra. And of course, some programming languages in Python. You need to learn cloud in terms of what you do. And of course, want to know security. But I think what we are looking for at this point in time for Indian IT skill gap, which is there, is the ability, is the passion to solve a problem, right? So we have always looked at solving a problem. We have never looked at finding the problem. So I think and we've lost this age-old philosophy for India, right? So Indians, if you notice the general Indian population, and we've lived it, and we are more seekers than believers. We never believe in something. If you believe in something, right, it's actually quite a rigid thought. When you seek, you continue to seek more. So we've lost that seeking art in the current IT world. It's more of a belief. Somebody says this is to be done in this way, I'll get it done, and that's a tick mark for 9 to 5 job. I think that something has to change. We have to start seeking things, and it's about finding the problem rather than solving a problem. It's all about finding that gap. So I think that is one part which is probably missing out, which the academics need to tell today's students. We get fantastically good students from an engineering background, all across, right? Whether you are sitting in Pune, in Bangalore, wherever, you get good students. The art of asking the right question for a problem is actually missing out. And I think that is probably the most important skill that we need. I think technology is available that I can solve the problem. Once you know the problem, there is a hypothesis, obviously. Once there is a hypothesis, there's obviously a POC that is done. Once there is a POC, yes, there will be an MVP. Once there is an MVP, yes, there will be scaled production. All that is a rigid system. I think we need to just declutter it and say, have I found the right problem? Have a hypothesis as yet? So most IT that we see today follows a pattern where they think that the problem is known. I need to define the solution. The way I normally tell students and when I tell within my labs, etc., is it's the art of capturing the problem first. So I think if we can just do that, I think the Indian education system is good enough to train a kid to actually get him and go through the engineering rigor and rigmarole to actually get you to solve the problem. But the art of finding a problem is very missing. That's one. The second is courage. I think we are changing. I've seen that change happen in a big way when I used to travel abroad earlier, and to now what I travel. There's a lot of courage that Indians now produce, right? And it's a lack of fear. I know the subject. I know this. But I defined it in one of my books, right? So in one of my books, I actually opened up the word courage. I said, C really means collaboration. And actually communication and curiosity. So the example that I've given in my book is Tesla was a great innovator, but it was Edison who was Tesla was an inventor, but Edison was the innovator because he actually collected and collaborated in the ecosystem. O is basically objectifying your goals, right? What do you really want to achieve? And that also comes with the problem. How do you find the problem? U is essentially you. In a very misnomeric way, U is YOU. You are the creator, so you have to believe in yourself to actually create it. R, I said, is rewiring your own psyche, right? So we have got two organs that really make the work done, right? The heart and the head. Heart's an organ that continues to pump blood 24/7, so that's why you live. It's this one that you need a lot of rewiring to be done. So you need to rewire it. Again, it's the art of unlearning and doing it again. A is asking stupid questions every day. And I think that's a practice that we follow even today in the lab, right? You know the answer, great story. Still bloody ask the question and ask a stupid question so that everybody laughs around. But the fact is, and we have seen this, and this is also a case study which is done by MIT, the more you ask these stupid questions, the complex ask that you're trying to solve suddenly starts becoming easier. Because these questions are outside in questions that nobody asks. Or people think that I know the answer. But when you ask it, the answer comes easily. G is setting up your goals. If you want to land on Mars, set a goal for landing in Jupiter. You will probably end up in Mars somewhere. And E is empathy. But what is taught to people, and specifically India, is please be empathetic and comfortable to the other person. Empathize, understand his problem. In the next world order, empathy is more with you. Because when you start rewiring or finding a problem, there are a lot of potholes of despair that you will get in. So it's that empathy with yourself saying that you can do it. Actually picks yourself up from the pothole and says, okay, let's go on to the next level. So I think if you follow these two patterns, that is probably the only skill set that is needed in the IT industry. I think the rest is being taught by teachers anyway, that I don't want to comment on that.
Great. So I didn't know that you were an author.
Yeah,
because that's not on your LinkedIn.
No, it is. I think I must have changed or whatever.
Okay.
So, but
that's really nice. You also spoke about the stupid question.
Yes.
So this is something I learned from my CEO, right? So whenever we have my one-on-ones, he kept saying, even if you have a stupid question, go for it and ask.
Yes.
So in the beginning, I used to be quite hesitant, right? I'm at a leader position. Isn't it
Why
too
should I ask
stupid?
it? Yeah.
No, isn't it too stupid for at my level?
Yeah.
And then when I started asking, it actually started helping me.
Yeah.
So even my team members, I'll say whatever mistakes you do it so that you get to learn from it.
Yeah.
And even if it's stupidest of questions, please feel free to ask. But don't do the same stupid mistake.
Yeah, so I've said it, remember Bart Simpson?
Uh-huh.
He always asks the stupid questions, so always keep him at his head in terms of what to do.
Which technology will define India's digital transformation? Is that cloud, AI, green energy, semiconductor?
Well, you already named all of them. I think.
So which primarily top three?
I think top three for me is going to be AI, of course, and I think that's the talk of the town probably. I think there are a lot of changes that we require in algorithms. That's one of my most pivotal research in the lab at this point in time. And there are hundreds of examples, right? So the AI that you see today is largely stochastical parrots. They are only made so that they can actually utter the next word available for you. Yes, they sound intelligent, but they're really not intelligent in terms of right. So you will notice that there's a big shift that comes in AI change. LLMs, yes, great. LLMs will go back. We will now create AI that actually understands more around your world and is closer to what a human thinks. Again, I want to make it clear for your viewers that this is not sentience that we're talking about. This is nothing to do with sentient beings. This is nothing to do with AI becoming more conscious. This is essentially being that AI drawing inspiration from what the human neocortex does. So human brain is actually two formats, right? So the prefrontal cortex and the neocortex itself. Neocortex is everything that actually gives you all the intelligence. So all your beliefs, your gods, your goddesses, your unbeliefs actually lie in your neocortex, which is established because your parents have actually trained you to a certain extent. Your other formats of animal behavior comes from your amygdala and your back and your midbrain, which basically is the flight and fright response, which typically says that when a person is in a specific situation, how do you handle it and how do you act faster? What we are trying to maneuver is how the neocortex works. And there are hundreds of great researches which is being done across the world. For example, a lot of people don't know that babies, when they are born, have actually no significance of the human face because they don't understand facial gestures till they are about 6 months old. So, our old philosophy of a mother, and he understands the mother, he doesn't understand the father, etc., is actually more of a fallacy. It's more of drawn from a social structure rather than a more scientific facet, right? So you can actually put a baby when he's born with actually some pets and animals. When the baby starts realizing the face, that pet itself becomes the mother, right? So that's the whole ideology of how human cortex develops. What we are trying to do is essentially trying to become more in terms of how you, as we as human beings, think and do the work. One of the things that human beings do is your brain's only got one job, and that is to predict the next microsecond. It's got nothing else, as per scientific terminology, right? We will not go into consciousness because that's a very different topic. But the fact that you take a step forward, the fact that you reach out your hand when somebody is talking to you, the fact that your gestures come is actually predicting just the next microsecond. So when that prediction goes bad, you have a feedback result to the brain and saying this didn't happen the way it didn't happen. So we're trying to build something like that. It's actually called a model which I'm building called Dream.ai, where the AI dreams about the solution before it actually gives the solution, but has not just the neural networks that you see, it's also more neurosymbolic in terms of how the symbolism comes in. So AI will grow to that facet, and you will see a lot more coming in AI. That's one of the technologies that will definitely grow. I think India is underpinning on a lot of work that will happen on quantum. And quantum security, you would see, should be one of those technologies, and quantum machine learning that should come up, because that will help us solve problems which are not possible in the classical world. Finding out new drugs, for example, for new diseases. As you can see, viruses are actually growing. Quantum security, for example. So the current security mechanism that you use as RSA, etc., can be broken by 1,000 qubit quantum computer today. So we are largely insecure in terms of what we are looking at, right, in the next 2 to 3 years. That security needs to change. It needs to become more robust to the quantum attack. So quantum would obviously grow. You obviously need a cloud to ensure that people are obviously connected and they are actually using it. But you would also start having a lot of disconnected approaches as well. So that is what we call as decentralized mode rather than the centralized mode. So a lot of things will happen on the edge. I want my work to be done with my machine on the edge. Why should I wait for a round trip to the server to come back? and in places where there's less connectivity, why should that not be the case, right? So a lot of edge-based use cases will actually start happening. So I see that growing, and that will also be a change in the manufacturing industry and etc. I think cyber security by definition, absolutely. But I think there's one more thing that we should do: responsible usage of tech, and that's a very used and abused word. If we do not give an objective to this tech, and if it goes into the wrong hand, there's absolutely chaos and mayhem that may happen. One of the things that I've written in my paper is that we should not be looking at robots being more intelligent. There has to be an objective to kill them. It's always a case, there's a runaway chance that embodied AI may prevent harm to its own body when attacked, rather than a virtual AI doing it in a much more controlled sense that we want to do it. So the way I profess is why have more embodied AI structures of AI? Have them with a certain objective and close them. Don't give them all the autonomy to do, because that may reach to a point where AI starts becoming more it's not called self-awareness, but it's called self-awareness of not having an harm to my body structure. So that may be detrimental to where we go, right? So those are the facets that we have to probably worry about in the next future. And I think the rest of the technologies would just bypass them. You're already seeing content being generated by AI, you're coding being done by AI. You will also see quantum come into the field for some of these things. So I think for tech that I really look at is security, obviously responsible use of tech, AI, and quantum, which I think is going to be the future for every country, barring not just India, every other country.
So how do you think AI is going to influence or rather change cloud computing?
Look, I think cloud will go through two shifts. And sometimes I always take this example that as a service industry, we are actually the jam between the two loaves of the bread. The top loaf is the hyperscaler, which is cloud, and the bottom loaf is the chip. So there's always a straddle that we have to do between the chip. I think the clouds will also become decentralized. So remember, it's kind of a phase. When I and you probably started working, it was all decentralized. We started looking at RPC. Suddenly HTML came up, and we started becoming more centralized. The shift today now is more towards decentralization. So it's kind of a sinusoidal graph that keeps on happening. I see there'll be a balance between the centralized and the decentralized mode. You can only go to the centralized picture, which is non-PII based systems, right? So where I don't have to spend my personal information, where I want to look at only things that I want to do from the world. But when it comes back to your personal information and your sharing and caring and your social structure, it'll start happening more decentralized. That is what I feel will happen.
Okay. So I didn't know that you did your medicine also. The way you explained about the brain front and back, I don't know how many people understood here, and I didn't understand anything. What I understood was you have a very good grip on medicine too.
Yeah, so the reason why I did AI was also to actually have a neuroscientific way into it. Unless I understand the human brain, I can't really pick up the AI components and build it. So I have to go towards the brain every other time to actually look at and take inspiration of what I'm trying to do.
That's quite deep actually.
Yeah, so
do you see IT talent as a strategic business asset or rather than just an IT support?
Yeah, I think we're in a business where people are very, very important, right? Unless we consider them as a strategic business asset, I don't think we've done our job as a corporate well. I think gone are the days when we actually consider IT, people as just the support functionally. I think they are really responsible for 2 or 3 things, if I may do it, right? Making sure that your business is run correctly. So they are in a way supporting, but also ensuring that they are being consultants to the customers as well. I think it's actually the customer's problem that you're solving at this. And being a services industry, you are largely connected to the customer. And if I can be a strategic consultant to the customer rather than just being a support, because support has a connotation that I will give you an order and you will have to perform on that order. A consultant or a strategic consultant really means is that I will give you other options as well. I would understand your problem. I would try and figure out how do I solve it with your demography and not just the demography that I come from, right? So I think they are definitely a business asset. The other thing is they are also harbingers of a lot of innovation that we do within the company. If it can't be. So look, being a chief innovation officer, I started an R&D lab. Yes, there is innovation that happens, but that cannot be the be-all end-all for a large corporate. We are a 150,000 people strong corporate. Unless and until every individual thinks that there is something out of the way that they do, right? And this is what we are doing now, is to basically channelize people's thoughts to say, can you create something which is extra from the normal stuff that you do?
Great. So if you have to align the same towards, L&Ds, because we spoke a lot about teaching and training. So I strongly believe when it comes to Viksit Bharat, people have to be trained.
Yes.
Because there's a huge gap between academia and
Yes.
industry expectations, right? So L&Ds also make a decision which impacts the board.
Correct.
But that doesn't lie only with L&D, because the business manager also have to be satisfied. So where do you think the business heads like CIOs, CTOs, IT heads, where they usually get the training requirements routed through L&D to get it delivered? So where do you think that gap is?
I don't think, as an organization, we have actually kind of fixed that gap. I think I've got a great chief learning officer in the organization. His name is Pramod Panda, and he's just, I think, 1.5, 2 years that he's joined. But the moment he came in, he actually took learning in, as not a single dimensional learning and development. He took it as a 10-step learning and development facet. And I of course, I don't remember all of his 10 steps, but his whole idea was that it's not just about people getting trained on tech. It's also about people getting trained behaviorally. Where does the requirement comes from? The requirement actually comes directly from business or the accounts who are actually handling this. So we are divided into verticals and service lines. So sometimes it's a completely horizontal requirement that I need this person trained with AI, SAP, ServiceNow, etc., or an NVIDIA stack, Microsoft stack. Sometimes it's also directly coming from the account who's handling the business directly, and business needs it. Now, we can take it as a direct requirement of training it, but we also need to ensure that this person has that longevity while he learns. And there's a kind of an injection given to him that he continues to learn over a period of time. I think that's where most of the L&D departments today are looking towards, rather than just being very platonic in terms of training that particular craft and trade, but also giving them outside-in skills of how they want to utilize this trade.
That's truly remarkable, because when we interact with L&Ds, that's what even we suggest them. It should not be a single program, it should be a continuous learning.
Correct.
So that is when a candidate will be motivated that my learning is, there is a destination or a goal.
Yeah.
So in order to reach that goal, these are the list of certifications or training I need to do.
Correct.
And when I achieve that goal, this is where my growth is. That is when an employee won't even think about finding an alternative job.
Yeah.
Because he's recognized his path is pretty clear. Yeah. And about gamification, Cloudad also has a gamification app called Cloud Attack. So to make the MCQs pretty interesting, right? Because those days are gone. Now we deal with a lot of Gen Zs.
Correct.
And L&Ds chase a lot of these candidates and their business heads also. Out of 15 people, only 5 people have completed the assessment.
Correct.
Email chain goes like crazy, and you told
We have
nobody
similar
checks email.
issues. We have similar issues.
So we have introduced a game, so where the MCQs is played in the form of game.
Ah.
So that is more interesting for any audience. It could be a Gen Z or a
Correct.
boomer or a millennial. So that is how we are also tracking up to the industry. So it's been very good results from especially company like yours and other big enterprises.
Right.
So what role does certification, hands-on labs, project implementation play a role in India's Viksit Bharat mission?
I think it's absolutely important. So one is an educated system. Yes, you must be educated. You should get certified. Only then you actually are, you get into the hands-on lab. But you should go through the hands-on labs to become actually learning. And I think India, and probably that's the gap which we were discussing. The gap is, how does India ran a drive where it says Saksharta bahut zaruri hai. You should at least know how to write your name. So I at least know what to do with my name as well. India obviously progressed, and he said, please be educated. And as a result of that, the NAP policy has actually changed in terms of that education cannot be just in English. It should also be in certain other languages that that you should read across. India now needs to progress into making more learned professionals. And I think for those learned professionals, you need to have those hands-on labs.
Okay, because there are a lot of large enterprises where the challenge was many employees were certified, but
Yes.
they did not have enough hands-on or confidence to clear the client interview. So that's when we introduced something called as experiential learning.
Yeah.
So ideally all the projects are delivered in groups. So we bifurcate people in groups and we give them a problem statement.
Yeah.
We give them time. They'll have to come up with a solution, present it, and perform hands-on in the group. So
Yeah.
whichever group performs with the closest, as accurate as expected by the mentor, we give them a leaderboard access. Because the trend we are finding it very often, there are many companies who are focusing on certification more than hands-on. But like you rightly told, it's combination. Everything has to be there. It's not just certification; it's hands-on also. And my next question is, how often does an L&D come to you, saying, "Hey Nikhil, like you asked, I've delivered this training.